Forget willpower. Seriously, just throw that idea out the window. Forget about waiting for inspiration to strike you like lightning. Today, we're going to blow up one of the biggest myths about productivity and replace it with a neurological framework you can use like right now. This isn't about trying harder, it's about being smarter. It's about engineering your own motivation.
The reason you start a task with zero energy but finish in a state of flow isn't willpower. It's a sudden neurological switch. We're going to show you the precise moment your brain stops resisting and finally commits to action. You see, most of us have this completely backward. We sit around waiting to feel motivated, right? Waiting for that jolt of energy that makes us want to start. But here's the secret. That feeling you're waiting for, it only shows up after you've already started. Today, we're going to find that switch, and I'm going to show you how to flip it on command.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll tackle the big motivation paradox. Then, we'll get into the science of your brain's veto tower, what's really holding you back. After that, we'll build the solution, the ignition protocol, a simple launch sequence that's going to help you master your focus starting today.
Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1, the motivation paradox. This is the big one. It's the fundamental misunderstanding that keeps so many of us trapped in that awful cycle of procrastination.
Here it is, the single most important idea you're going to hear today. Motivation is not the cause of action, it's the effect. It's the neurochemical reward your brain gives you for just getting started. So our goal isn't to wander around hoping to find motivation somewhere. The real goal is to trigger what we call the ignition point, that first tiny, deliberate step that forces your brain to release the very chemicals that create the feeling of motivation. You don't find it, you generate it. So if motivation comes from taking action, why does starting something feel like hitting a brick wall? I mean, it can be physically painful sometimes, right? Well, that question leads us straight to the neurological veto. These are the specific mechanics in your brain that are actively working against you.
This slide just lays it all out. On the left, that's the trap we all fall into. I need to feel motivated before I can start. It sounds right, it feels right, but from a brain science perspective, it's a total dead end. The neurological fact, over on the right, is that action is the spark. The physical act of just beginning is what signals your brain's reward system to wake up and release the focus and drive you thought you needed in the first place.
Now, there's a scientific term for this resistance we all feel. It's called activation energy. Think of it like this. You've got a heavy box you need to push across the floor. That first shove, getting it to move from a dead stop, that takes the most effort. That's activation energy. In our brains, this shows up as initiation paralysis, that feeling of being frozen, knowing what you should do, but you just can't start. This isn't a character flaw, okay? It is a real, measurable neurological barrier. So who's the bad guy hitting the brakes? Meet your limbic system. This is the ancient, emotional part of your brain. It's your survival brain, and its only jobs are to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and, this is the big one, conserve energy. When it sees a huge task like write that 20-page report, it doesn't see the future reward. It just sees a massive energy drain. It sees high activation energy and it slams on the emergency brake. It vetoes the action. And this whole problem is made so much worse because we all misunderstand dopamine. We think dopamine is this big prize we get at the finish line, but its real job for motivation is to be the fuel to keep going. It's released in little drips after you start, encouraging you to continue. So if you're waiting for a hit of dopamine to get you started, you're waiting for a paycheck for a job you haven't even clocked in for yet. Okay, so we have a really clear problem. High activation energy is triggering a hard veto from our primal brain. Now let's build the solution. This is the ignition protocol, and it's basically a clinical framework designed to intelligently sneak past that neurological barrier.
The protocol has 3 pretty simple phases. First, we do an activation energy audit to figure out what's really making it so hard to start. Second, we use what's called a 2-minute launch to fly right under the limbic system's radar. And third, we intentionally create a dopamine feedback loop to make starting easier and more automatic every single time.
Let's be crystal clear about our strategy here. We are not trying to find more willpower to smash through the wall. That's a losing battle, and it just drains you. The entire goal is to be smarter than our own primal brain. We're going to systematically lower the perceived activation energy so low that the limbic system doesn't even see the task as a threat. We're going to make starting so ridiculously easy that it actually feels harder not to do it.
So we know what the protocol is, but why is it so darn effective? This is where it gets really cool. Now we're going to dive into the science that makes this system work so reliably.
This protocol basically exploits three key functions of your brain. First, it bypasses the veto, a commitment of just 2 minutes that's so small, so non-threatening, that the limbic system's alarm bells just don't go off. It's a ninja move. Second, it triggers what psychologists call behavioral activation. The moment you start that 2-minute physical action, your brain releases that first little trickle of dopamine, not as a prize, but as fuel. It's your brain saying, okay, we're doing this, here's some energy to keep going. And third, this whole process creates the perfect on-ramp to a flow state. That tiny initial win gives you a microdose of success and a sense of control, which paves the way for that deep, effortless concentration we're all looking for.
We've covered the theory, we've covered the science. Now for the most important part, execution. Let's get into the practical, step-by-step sequence for putting this into action right now.
So how do you actually do this? When you're staring at that project you've been putting off for weeks, what is the exact physical and mental sequence you need to follow to just get going? Let's get tactical.
Here it is, your non-negotiable launch protocol. 3 steps. Step 1 is the audit and setup. This is where you identify the absolute first physical action and you set up your environment to have zero friction. So if the task is go for a run, the setup is laying out your clothes, shoes, and headphones the night before. Step 2 is the physical launch, the moment of truth. And step 3 is the acknowledgement, a crucial 10-second ritual to close the loop and train your brain for next time.
Let's really focus on the one rule for step 2, because this is everything. The only commitment you are making is for 2 minutes. That is it. You don't have to finish the task, you don't even have to do a good job. You just have to do the initial physical action for 120 seconds. And here's the magic key. You must give yourself full permission to stop after 2 minutes. That permission is the escape hatch that makes the decision to start feel completely safe to your brain.
Now, to cross that dangerous gap between deciding to start and actually starting, we use a physical trigger. You might have heard of it, Mel Robbins' 5-second rule. It is brutally effective. The moment you decide to start your 2 minutes, you're going to count down out loud if you can. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch. And on launch, you physically move. No thinking, no hesitating, no negotiating with yourself. This countdown acts as a pattern interrupt. It short-circuits your brain's habit of hesitating and gives you just enough of a window to get moving before your limbic system can slam on the brakes.
Okay, finally, after your 2 minutes are up, and it doesn't matter if you stop or keep going, you must complete step 3. Take 10 seconds and say to yourself, either in your head or out loud, I successfully initiated the task. That effort generated momentum. Now, this isn't some cheesy positive thinking trick. It's a clinical technique. You are consciously acknowledging the win of starting. This simple act closes that dopamine feedback loop, and it tells your brain that the act of starting is itself a rewarded behavior. You are actively training yourself to become a person who starts.
And all of this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, mastering effortless focus. Let's boil everything we've covered down into the single most important lesson from this entire framework.
If you remember absolutely nothing else from this, please remember this. You don't wait for motivation to act, you act to generate motivation. This one sentence will fundamentally shift your relationship with work and effort. You are no longer a victim of your fleeting feelings. You become the architect of them. Action is your tool. Motivation is the result.
So let's do a quick masterclass recap. The motivation ignition point solves the problem of initiation paralysis and low drive. Why does this matter? Because it gives you a system to generate your own dopamine and bypass your brain's emotional veto on command. The framework is simple, the 2-minute rule and the dopamine loop. And the psychology behind it is just so elegant. It conserves your willpower and creates the perfect conditions for a flow state.
And remember, productivity isn't about doing more. It's not about brute force. It's about mastering systems that make focus effortless. Stop fighting your brain. Start working with it. Use this protocol, engineer your own motivation, and go discover what you're truly capable of.